This shot looks like it was taken in a pro studio, I hope. But it was actually built right here, in my apartment on the world's smallest functional stage. At least that was my goal going into this project. Getting the curve smooth and right was actually pretty easy. But getting a super smooth surface that wouldn't cast any micro shadows meant very little room for error, and it proved
much harder than I.
But first, let's start at the beginning. Sleep doesn't always come anymore. What is an idea but an urge to do? A desire to prove? I can't shake this one. It crawls from my pillow to my ears. Mini infinity. Cyclorama. It's like a wall, but it's small. The smallest in the world, maybe. So I'm thinking about this little mini infinity table right now. And these flaps fold down, like sort of like, coffee tables have, of course. And in case you're curious, 95% of this project looks exactly like this. For forever. But first, let's start at the beginning. The story begins many moons ago when I decidedly grew tired of my day-to-day and decided to pursue a new passion in woodworking and restoring old furniture. I bought this table at Goodwill for $3. Originally, I thought I might make it taller, like a small bar, or maybe even like a blackjack table on wheels thing, but I didn't do that. If I did that, maybe I'd be happy today. But instead, I decided the curved base was perfect for a small-scale cyclorama. I had the vision, and I just needed to lock in. So all I have from when I first assembled it is some photos I took as I was working. So please allow me to give you a little slideshow montage to catch you up to present day. So minus the 1x2s, this is what I saw in Goodwill for $3. And I painted it blue beforehand because apparently I like extra work. But the plan was fairly simple. Make a frame, in this case with 7 brackets of wood that I screwed together to make a shell so the curved surface could rest in that shell. Early on, I was making these notches in the wood and then weight pressing them to try to curve the planks, but I kind of gave up and started just screwing things together. Next time, maybe I would try soaking the wood in water to curve it, but I'm not really sure if that would work either. I got a bunch of these chipboard sheets, which are basically cardboard, and started fitting them together to establish the curve and nailing them down to the frame. Once all the chipboards were fit together, I was getting pretty psyched about how it was coming together, but I didn't realize the hardest part was still ahead. So to get a smooth surface and fill the cracks, I used joint compound, which is the same stuff you use to mud drywall in your home. It was pretty difficult to get into the curves in like smaller areas and have it be smooth, so I mostly defaulted to just doing a bunch of passes and sanding in between. Then I spray painted it white, and I think this part was a mistake because it really locked in the surface and made it not very sandable after that. And the white I later realized was actually too white. So for something like this, like an infinity wall, I think you really want more of an off-white color because true white, it's pretty harsh. It bounces reflected light all over. It shows every little blemish. The shadows are more contrasted, and it doesn't look quite as nice as an off-white surface, which is much more forgiving. So you'll see me resurfacing it again in this video, and that's why I'm repainting it. And in camera, when it's exposed for everything, the surface still reads as white anyways, but it's so much more forgiving now. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can I just tape a piece of paper to the wall? And yeah, probably, but if you want a flimsy, warped background, it's not a stationary, permanent fixture, so it always needs to be set up. It's always getting wrinkled. It's always getting moved around. The lighting isn't permanent. And I want something more functional. And right now, this is literally just cardboard, and a little bit of thin wood that I propped up. The turntable will be, level, like flush. How it's gonna be completely flush, I haven't worked out yet. It's gonna have some sort of skirt on it, I guess. I've never really liked the center anyways, so I guess I could just cover it, paint it the same. Getting the lighting even is a whole separate thing, but that's gonna be a whole thing. We're just gonna move on because I think sometimes when you just start on projects like these, the answers kind of become apparent in the process. Like, you'll encounter things that you maybe didn't think of before, or you'll think of new ideas that are better than the ones you had before. I don't know. But a lot of times it just sort of becomes apparent. So I'm just gonna move on. Yeah, 2 centimeters. Looks like pushing 4, but not quite 4. It's an awkward measurement. Oh, the leg lifts it up. The leg lifts it up. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so it's 4 centimeters. It's double. I have this bracket that I made for the IKEA table video, and I think I can basically just use that. We just come into my highly organized closet and get a piece of wood, which we all have in our closets, right? I swear I did not pre-cut this. This was literally just hanging out in my closet. Okay, so I was thinking was this would bolt on here, one on that side, have this wood in the middle. Looks like we can get about 2 centimeters in or off of the surface with this bracket without even having to reprint it, so that's kind of awesome. So yeah, we might be able to test this theory out here real quick. Alright, I decided it needed sanding first anyways, so we're just gonna do that. And yeah, this light's pretty hot, so it should point out all the uneven areas pretty well. Hell yeah. Okay, so this isn't going totally how I wanted it to go. Last night I hit it with some filler because just having trouble getting it as smooth as I want it to be. And this paint is so old and nasty that it has these chunks in it, and they're causing these bubbles that have been plaguing this entire project. Probably a smart person would just go buy new paint. But I am not a smart person, so I'm going to just keep pushing and just keep sanding it in between coats, and hopefully I am using my cry cut to cut out a circle which will go over the turntable. The turntable needs to be a perfect circle because when it spins in motion, the bad edges will stand out like a deflated tire will wobble. This roll of Velcro has lasted me years. Velcro is one of my favorite connection applications, I think. You can just cut it and stick anything together. So I connected the turntable covers with small pieces, and that way the wings will still fold down if I ever need that option. So I think we're approaching the end of this build, and I want to get the lighting somewhat dialed, but I think it's going to be a little bit of an ongoing living thing, because I was thinking in a future video I might actually add drawers to the shop bench, and then the drawer could pull out here and the lighting was rigged under there. It could be a little bit more evenly on the table maybe. So I know it's a little bit of a cop-out, but I think this is actually pretty good for now, and we can sort of move on and adapt from there. But before we do, let's do a quick little diffusion demo so we can see what the silk is actually doing to the shadows. So I set up this high CRI strand, and I have a double diffusion layered over it. Here is a quick before and after the diffusion. So it's gonna look even better, but I'm pretty happy with how it looks already. It should not leave any sheen, so I really hope it doesn't, because I want the surface to be very flat. I think we got us a rolling but rigid infinity table, and I think it might be the smallest in the world. I don't know, I just wanted to claim that title if it's up for grabs, but anyways, let's get to the fun part and do some experiments on it. First up is the obvious stuff, product photography kinds of stuff, and just general staging stuff, I think. Like a miniature stage I could use for some forced perspective or something. It's nice to have a good place to do all that quickly, because I actually do sell things sometimes, although it's a little bit more like a hobby than a side hustle, but I've always since high school found little weird niches to either buy and sell or... This is a sock rig. I bet you haven't seen or heard that before, because I just made it up. But this sock goes on and is sort of malleable, and I'm gonna scan it. I've actually set up a few demos to see how this can work. The hardest part of 3D scanning is honestly just finding a good subject. Like, everything is either branded or trademarked or whatever, so the best things are usually just organic, like this cauliflower. No one is coming after trademark on this, and I'm kind of curious if the color stands out enough and how that porous texture will work through photogrammetry. For the smaller details, I scanned a stem of flowers from outside my apartment. The last thing I used is a chocolate caramel croissant. It was delicious, by the way. Sorry you can't try it, but you can look at it in 3D now because I scanned it. That's right. And once scanned, they are kind of just forever assets. I can bring them into any project, and 3D relighting is pretty easy, so you can see now how I can kind of just spin them around to find a good angle and change the lighting however I want. Doing it again, I would probably use more data, as in like longer videos, more photos, and I think put some tracking markers on the turntable, because I think the algorithm was actually a bit confused by some of these, and I was kind of impatient, and honestly, a lot of this stuff, what you put in is correlated to what you get out, so good captures I think for the garbage I threw in. Next I want to try a virtual production. This one's been in the back of my head for a while too. I want to make this stage like the Volume. You know, you've probably seen the Volume. It's that giant fancy virtual production set that got really popular when The Mandalorian came out. But if I have Unreal Engine set to live import a feed pointed at this stage and have it set to live key, then I can take whatever I want and insert it into Unreal, and it's live keyed and comped into the virtual set that way. In this case, it's not a chroma key but a luma key, so the white goes away basically. It's not perfect, like reflections are a bit of an issue, but if it's not a glossy surface, it works pretty well. And I can have my 3D scans in Unreal Engine live with the real thing, in a live feed. I'm starting to wonder how meta this project can go, but my head's starting to hurt a little. I think, yes, I hear the voices calling again. Cyclorama. It's like a wall, but it's small. This small? Okay, let's do one more final experiment. The Zoetrope. Well, technically not a Zoetrope, because that's a spinning wheel with the slits you look into, and that's not to be confused with the slightly earlier version, the phenakistoscope, which is the same concept, but instead you spin the wheel while standing in front of a mirror. And don't confuse that one with the praxinoscope, which is the later improved upon Zoetrope, because it replaces the slits in the Zoetrope with mirrors, so the animation is brighter and smoother, often with a better viewing angle. But wait, the same Edward Muybridge, who we are referencing here with the horse in motion test, created his own too, that we shouldn't confuse either. That one was called the zoopraxinoscope. Wait, It was called the Zoopraxiscope, and it took again these similar discs of sequential images, but put them on glass discs this time that it projected. And bingo bango, we have the creation of the first movie projector. I think I sort of got the idea for this 3D strobe zoetrope from Studio Ghibli. They have these amazing displays in the Ghibli Museum. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to record them, so you'll just have to take my word for it or fly to Japan for yourself. But the displays are really incredible, and they have these 3D strobe effect zoetropes that are like giant flywheels spinning around, and they flash the lights sequentially, so when the object is in the right position, the light comes on and it appears as if it's moving. I did buy a little souvenir in the gift shop, a little pocket zoetrope similar to the displays they had. So if you can't make it, it was, you know, sort of like this, but this is really not doing it justice. Awesome gift shop haul, by the way. So anyways, as you can see, I 3D printed these 12 horses I found online to simulate a 24 FPS test. If I place a little marker, I'll know when exactly it does a full 360-degree rotation, and I know a full rotation at 12 FPS is 1 second. So I can adjust the speed on the back end of the clip so that it loops that 1 second, and now it's all there. What do you mean, you can't see it? Well, that's because our eye holes in our heads are being too slow. It all blurs together. That's what Mybridge was testing with his horse in motion. He confirmed that all the legs of the horse could indeed all be in the air and not touching the ground at a single moment in time. Literally no one before this experiment knew that because they couldn't see it to prove it. Isn't that crazy? So what we have to actually do to make it visible is subtract information so our dumb brains can process it fast enough. I'll crop in on one horse here to make it a little easier to see, and then remove every other frame. Bam, that dropped frame means it's literally half the information. And the black frame is essentially a camera shutter for our eyes, and now we can see all the horses running. Again, it's the exact same footage, but with every other frame dropped. Now let's try slowing down the shutter by 50%. See the doubling? That's aliasing. Literally, it's temporal aliasing that is happening in your brain. The shutter is now out of sync with the image timing, and our brain sees both at the same time because of the persistence of vision, which is another concept which is basically how we see described in two phenomena. First phenomena is after image, like our brain latency. We retain images for a brief moment after we see them, typically around 60 milliseconds, which is why our screens have a 60 hertz refresh rate, because that's now fast enough that we don't see the flashing. The other aspect is the phi phenomenon. I think I'm saying that right. And hold on to your butts because this one is even weirder. The phi phenomenon is the illusion of continuous motion. Simply, it's movies, right? But less simply, it's our brain doing generative infill. Literally, what we see is not all there. There's a blind spot in all of our eyes where the temporal nerve is, and the brain just fills that in like Photoshop. It filters motion blur and is basically a computer running a predictive model. I mean, our brain prioritizes continuative narrative over accuracy of what it is actually seeing in front of us. It begs the question, how much of what we're seeing isn't even there? This lag in our processing means we are never seeing the present. We're always seeing about 60 milliseconds ago into the past. So what if there's something happening in between the frequency that we can process that we can't even see because it's out of the phase with our biological sampling rate? Like when that happens here in animation, we call that out of sync image ghosting. It's like a ghosting effect. And I'm not trying to bring you down a conspiracy rabbit hole and convince you that ghosts exist and are just too fast for us to see. No, of course I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to convince you that this is all actually evidence supporting simulation theory. We aren't seeing the world, we're seeing a low bitrate, post-processed reconstruction designed to prevent our brains from crashing. This ghosting I'm showing you isn't just a trick of the light, it's a hardware conflict. It's an artifact that occurs when the sampling rate of our biology fails to sync with the refresh rate of the universe. And if reality were analog and infinite, there would be no such thing as a sampling error. But there is. And if the universe has a frame rate, someone or something must have set the shutter speed. Oh yeah, and the Zoetrope, well, I 3D scanned that too, and it did pretty much the same exact thing, but with render-based physics. Because what is life other than a big ol' physics engine? So, bye now, thanks for watching. I hope you'll subscribe to go down the next rabbit hole with me.